Hello and welcome. This video has top comments with some funny stories from an article about air travel etiquette. Included are interesting facts from Wikipedia. Please share your comments below. The problem with asking the person behind you if they mind you reclining your seat is that you're giving them the right to say they mind. That's not acceptable. That's the airline pushing responsibility for a problem of their making onto its paying customers. To the airline, remove some rows so everyone can recline like they used to. As a single person who most often flies solo, I can't tell you how often I'm asked to accommodate a couple and how often they seem to think that keeping couples together is the responsibility of society and single people. It's not. End of story. I upgraded to first class and reserved an aisle seat. As I boarded the plane, the flight attendant asked if I would be willing to switch to a window seat to accommodate a couple. Having just come from the lounge and feeling generous due to a couple gin and tonics, I was okay with that. I regretted it immediately. Why should I have to give up my seat for them? They can't be separated for 4 hours and they'd probably been upgraded? I stewed about that the entire flight. When the plane landed, the husband stood up and thanked me again. I muttered, "Sure, fine." The next person to get up was his wife, who I now realized was blind. So I'd spent 4 hours whining silently about being mildly inconvenienced to help out a blind person. Sometimes things aren't what they seem. Airline seats should never recline. The airlines have jammed so many seats into today's planes that reclining is no longer practical. If you want to recline, fly first class only. The worst person on a plane is the passenger who shoves their big roller bag into the bin above row 11, then heads to their seat in row 32. As an 80-year-old guy who remembers when air travel was something to look forward to and what many folks dressed in their best clothes for, I would like to say that now air travel is perhaps the closest thing that the average person experiences to a prison camp. Having arrived early, I told the gate agent that I was flying solo and would happily change seats to accommodate a family, which she did. I didn't notice until boarding that the angel had bumped me to first class, so I never got to thank her properly. I often travel with only a small bag in the cabin. No Titanic carry-on that I stuff into the overhead. However, just because it's small, I still don't want to have my little bag at my feet. I want to carry my little wee bag in my personal space, and woe betide anyone who tells me to put my small bag at my feet because someone else wants to put their kitchen sink in the overhead. Or maybe I'll just put my small carry-on inside a normal-sized one next time and take up more room. Easier to avoid confrontation, I suppose. Air travel is so ridiculous nowadays. When someone asks to switch seats, and they often do feel they are entitled to ask and demand, I have found that telling them that, "Sorry, this is my lucky seat. I request it specifically," ends the conversation. Even the unreasonable don't want to argue with the illogical. My mom, grandmom, and I flew to DC together. I arranged all the seats. Everyone got aisle seats, but my grandmom was 2 rows back. Halfway through the flight, I went back to see my grandmom. No longer in her aisle seat, but at the window. Her seat now occupied by a man. I asked why she wasn't in her seat, and the man said, "I asked her to switch seats, so she did." I replied, "Oh, so you stood over the already seated 80-year-old small woman and intimidated her into crawling into a seat she would have trouble getting in and out of because you knew you could. He got huffy. I got more angry at him, and then the flight attendant came to ask what was going on. He kept his seat, but he also ended up giving my grandmom the difference in cost between his seat and hers. He admitted he had purchased his ticket months before at a reduced amount, assuming he'd be able to talk his way into the aisle because he always had before. That paid for a very nice dinner for the three of us. My grandmom was livid at me for days for embarrassing her. Sleeping in an aisle seat on a red-eye from New Zealand, I woke to a man yelling loudly. In the aisle, a very large barefoot man was standing with his foot raised with a toothpick stuck about halfway into the arch of his foot. He was too bulky and pain-ridden to reach it, let alone see it. Before I was fully conscious, as he continues to yell in pain, I reached over and yanked. The first time wasn't hard enough, and he yelled in agony. One more good yank and the toothpick came out. He looked at me incredulously and stumbled back to his seat without a word. I put the toothpick in a napkin, handed it to the attendant who had finally made it to the scene, and went back to sleep. Good times. Along with socks, I highly recommend keeping your shoes on too. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Also, leave your comments below. Thank you for watching.